The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host, Don McIntosh, and I'm glad you've joined us today. Today we're going to be talking about a very important and somewhat troubling subject for many in America, and that is the subject of cancer. And many times when we even hear that word, we're kind of filled with fright and worry, and all of us probably know someone that is struggling with cancer, and I would dare say that all of us want to avoid it. And so talking with us about this important subject is Dr. Timothy Lawton. He's a physician in Wichita, Kansas, and Wichita, Kansas is just like any other city in America. It has a lot of people that have cancer and a lot of other lifestyle problems, and Dr. Lawton has started a lifestyle medicine center there called Vitae, which means life, and he gives advice on all kinds of America's killer diseases and also including our topic today, cancer. Dr. Lawton, you told me something that was, by the way, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We're glad that you could take time out of your busy schedule. You told me something that just really gripped my attention. You said that cancer now is the #1 cause of death in America?
After decades and decades of heart disease being the #1 cause of death, cancer as of 2005 has stepped ahead, at least for people under the age of 85.
So if I'm a woman or if I'm a man, is there any greater risk for...
The lifetime risk or prevalence of cancer is almost 50%. It's 47% for men and 38% for women in America.
Wow. And, I mean, is it because there's all kinds of new chemicals? What's the problem?
Well, we know there's been on the order of 75,000 new chemicals registered with the EPA since the 1930s. But we can't blame just the chemicals. There's a lot of lifestyle factors that may be even more significant than the carcinogens in the environment.
Now, there's been some elegant research done on cancer, and I think you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
There has been a landmark study, and I'll be sharing the details of that in just a minute, but this was published in 1997, looking at a compilation of 4,500 smaller studies, and they came up with about 10 lifestyle recommendations.
So this is 4,500 studies, all
worldwide,
crystallized down to 10 principles.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so tell us about this.
I use those principles when I counsel patients on lifestyle-related cancers. And one patient I'm thinking of in particular, Don, he was a gentleman around 50 years of age, and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he got treated in the usual manner. And the doctor said, "You're in remission." A few months later, he came back to his doctor and said, "Doc, I got some rectal bleeding." The doctor said, "You need a colonoscopy." And,
Pretty typical.
Yeah, and at age 50, it's recommended that everyone have a colonoscopy just as a screening for colon cancer, which affects 1 out of 20 Americans. Well, this guy was like the 1 out of 20. He had colon cancer after supposedly beating his prostate cancer. Now his doctor said, "Okay, we'll treat you for the colon cancer." So he went through the usual treatment for that. Still, though, he was in remission. The doctor said, "You know, it's time. You know, you make peace with the world and with your Maker, and you know, get things in order." He wasn't satisfied with that. He wanted to know what he could do to prevent any kind of recurrence. So we looked at specifically the prostate cancer and the colon cancer, and we looked at some of the lifestyle principles that are involved there. So this gentleman, he didn't smoke, so that was a good sign. But lifestyle factors, he wasn't getting any regular physical activity, and that makes a huge difference with colon cancer.
Is that right? So exercise actually helps prevent colon cancer?
It's been proven soundly.
So what kind of exercise?
Well, it doesn't have regular moderate activity, like a brisk walk most days of at least 30 minutes or 60 minutes is recommended.
So you're sharing with us, things that we can do to prevent, but
Yeah.
like in this particular guy's case, he actually it went into remission, and these were great things to do to make sure it didn't crop up again.
Right, and then we also looked at the dietary factors too. He was eating a diet that was typical of many Western diets, very low in fruits and vegetables and low in fiber and high in meat and dairy, and those are factors for prostate and colon cancer.
What about protein diets?
There's a lot of high protein diets out there right now.
Right.
You remind me of Dr. Colin Campbell. He did a significant amount of research and published it in a book called The China Study. And one of the things that he looked at was a carcinogen called aflatoxin.
Aflatoxin, okay.
And aflatoxin is it's one of the two most potent naturally occurring carcinogens that we know of. It grows on moldy peanuts and moldy corn.
Moldy peanuts. Okay.
So what he discovered in rats and in humans, the more aflatoxin one is exposed to, the more liver cancer one has. Subsequently, though, again, both in the laboratory and in human beings, high protein diets, especially diets high in casein, which is the primary protein in dairy, those tend to promote the cancer in the liver. Diets low in animal protein tend to suppress or prevent aflatoxin from going on to cause cancer.
Well, this is fascinating. I mean, in America today, dairy is a big part of our consumption, isn't it?
And growing, too.
Now, do you think that, if in this study that the casein or the protein was actually turning, would you say turning on the cancer, turning off the cancer?
In the studies, in the rat studies that Dr. Campbell presented, the rats who had a low protein diet, 5% protein, had 0 cases of liver cancer, even though they were exposed to the aflatoxin. Those rats who are eating the high protein diet, the 20%, 100% of these rats ended up with liver cancer.
Ooh.
100% to 0% is pretty convincing. And this also was true in epidemiologic studies. He did some research overseas in the Philippines with children who were exposed to the aflatoxin.
So let me get this straight then. If I live in a country or have a family history or whatnot of cancer, protein, especially the protein found in milk or cheese or dairy, I have to be very careful about the amount that I get.
Don, you want to be careful in what you say here because this is liver cancer and this is one study.
Okay.
But I think the general principle that Dr. Campbell wanted people to know is that diet choices are or at least can be even more important than exposure to carcinogens.
Okay, let's talk then about how to prevent this. You want to help us, we've seen the magnitude of the problem. How can we be preventing?
Well, let's talk about that study I mentioned,
Okay.
and we've got a couple graphics on that. The first thing that, and the most important thing is choosing a diet that is predominantly plant-based. Plant-based meaning the foods are coming from plant sources and they are minimally refined. So you're getting foods in their whole forms as they grew in nature.
So like our picture says, we eat the carrots, we eat all the different colors.
The fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the beans, and the nuts. Those are the main foods that grow in nature.
So raw foods?
The interesting thing about raw foods, some nutrients are more available to us in the raw form. Some are more available in the cooked form.
So what would be the ones more available in raw form?
Most of the foods that we eat cooked, like beans, for example, that helps our body to be able to utilize and digest some of the nutrients that are in there. Some foods, like spinach or carrots, we can eat either cooked or raw. I usually recommend people, when they consume their vegetables, try and keep a balance, about half raw, about half cooked. That way you'll have a good balance.
Now in Wichita, where you and I live, there's a restaurant there that that has all those raw things, and you can put them in a salad. Is that something you'd recommend, that type of place?
I recommend eating salads and raw foods every single day. Yeah.
Now, I saw a study that said that there's only 1 in 4 Americans that really follow this advice.
The American Cancer Society recommends getting at least 5 to 9 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables a day. Some raw, some cooked. But
not very many.
Only less than 25% of Americans get even 5, which is the minimum.
Yeah, and I mean, this is after they have all these campaigns to tell people they need to do this. So what do you do? I suppose people that have someone that develops cancer, they're very interested in doing all the right things, but it's best to do it before then.
Right, right.
What else can we do to avoid cancer?
Well, another thing that the study found is on our next graphic, and that's about keeping your weight in a healthy range. There's a measurement that's called body mass index, which the recommended body mass index is between 18.5 and 25.
What does that mean exactly?
That's a ratio based on height and weight, and there's a mathematical formula. People can get more information on that, on the internet, or there's articles and
how that really works.
Right.
But really, I mean, you want to weigh less than you normally do. They figure out,
we know that 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese.
Yeah, I saw an interesting graphic on that recently that since the 90s, it's just skyrocketed the last decade, obesity.
And obesity increases your risk for some kinds of cancer, particularly endometrial cancer, which is of the uterus, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. There may be other cancers as well.
So obesity is a hazard to, then you would say, both men and women.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going down the 10 things that are recommended from this large study, the China study, right? What's the next?
This study is actually called the Food, Nutrition, and Prevention of Cancer, a Global Perspective. This is the 4,500 studies.
Okay, great. So aside from eating the fruits and vegetables and then maintaining an ideal weight.
Number 3 is being physically active, and they recommended being active at least 60 minutes a day. Moderate activity, which can be brisk walking, enough that you're having to catch your breath a little bit, but not so much that you're out of breath.
Okay.
And this doesn't have to all be done at one time. You can walk 20 minutes here and 10 minutes there and walk up the stairs and combine it to add up to the 60 minutes. Plus some vigorous activity is recommended as well.
Okay, and that's something I think we many times fall down on in America. I mean, we're very sedentary. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Lawton. We're talking about cancer. We're talking about the fact that it's now #1 in terms of causing death in America for those under 85. And we're talking about how to prevent it. And of course, if you have cancer, this is also going to help you perhaps recover from that, Lord willing. And we're going to be continuing our talk with Dr. Lawton when we come back.
Have you found yourself wishing that you could shed a few pounds? Have you been on a diet for most of your life, but not found anything that will really keep the weight off? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then we have a solution for you that works. Dr. Hans Diehl and Dr. Eileen Ludington have written a marvelous booklet called Reversing Obesity Naturally, and we'd like to send it to you free of charge. Here's a medically sound approach successfully used by thousands who were able to eat more and lose weight permanently without feeling guilty or hungry through lifestyle medicine. Dr. Diehl and Dr. Ludington have been featured on 3ABN, and in this booklet, they present a sensible approach to eating, nutrition, and lifestyle changes that can help you prevent heart disease, diabetes, and even cancer. Call or write today for your free copy of Reversing Obesity Naturally, and you could be on your way to a healthier, happier you. It's absolutely free of charge, so call or write today.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Lawton. We're talking about cancer, and we're talking about how you can avoid America's #1 killer. That's #1 for those under 85, and how you can prevent that. Dr. Lawton is a medical doctor in Wichita, Kansas. He has started a lifestyle medicine center called Vitae, which means life. It's an excellent approach. I've been there and been able to visit what you're doing. You have various programs that you run, lifestyle programs, and you follow people medically. I mean, it's not just, okay, this may help you. You're able to do the things, everything they have done in a medical doctor, and you work with their, I think, local physician as well, don't you?
Right. Patients can either see us for their primary physician, or we can work in concert with their other providers.
We're talking about cancer, and we talked, just to recapitulate, about how it's a very big problem both for men and women, and then we were looking at this global perspective study, those 4,500 studies, and it had 10 points. We talked about, remind us of the 3 we've gone through, and then let's continue on.
All right. The first point was to choose predominantly a plant-based diet. Most of your food's coming from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and nuts and seeds. The second point was to maintain a healthy weight, and the third point was to get adequate physical activity on a regular basis.
Okay, let's continue on then. What's number 4?
Okay, point number 4 is there's a certain number of fruits and vegetables that are recommended. It's 5 to 10 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. People are wondering sometimes how much a serving is. Usually, it's about what you would eat normally. It would be like a medium-sized apple or a medium-sized orange is considered 1 serving.
Okay.
As far as things like the salad vegetables, it's usually 1 cup of raw or a ½ cup of cooked vegetables. Take spinach, for example. The volume decreases when you cook it.
So 5 to 10 a day. So 5 apples a day keeps the doctor away.
Well, you really need to eat fruit and or vegetables with every single meal. That's the only way to get it in, and for snacks.
And for snacks.
Yeah.
Okay. What's our next recommendation?
Well, the next recommendation is really keeping the refined sugar intake low, keeping it to less than 10% of our total daily calories. And that interestingly, that's consistent with the U.S. government's new food guidelines. They recommend that you keep 90% of your food as being whole foods and about 10% or less as being what they call discretionary calories.
Okay. Now, is there a link between sugar consumption and cancer that's been shown in the research?
And that's what the study has concluded, yeah.
So your M&Ms, your Skittles, all those different things, don't eat too many of them.
You can get your 5 or 9 servings of different colors in M&Ms and Skittles, but they're not fruits and vegetables.
That's
so.
right. Right. Okay. Anything else?
Well, point number 6 was alcohol is not recommended. And that they felt very clearly alcohol is linked with a number of different kinds of cancer, especially cancer of the digestive tract, the mouth, throat, and
why is it? You know any etiology on that? How does that work?
Well, the alcohol is a poison and a toxin, and it seems to be toxic to areas that it comes in contact with.
So just avoiding that completely. And I think that's a good recommendation for lots of reasons. It kind of can make you loopy, too, and then you make bad decisions. What's our next one?
Recommendation number 7 was meat consumption, limiting meat consumption, especially red meat. And I think this is an interesting point. They say if you choose to eat red meat, limit consumption to less than 3 ounces a day. And if you think about your 16-ounce steak or something, that'll feed your whole family for at least half a week, won't it?
Yeah, so in other words, it's probably best to not eat any meat if you want to avoid cancer, but if you do, make sure and avoid red meat.
Well, Don, they suggested that if you do consume meat, choose meat that either is from fish or poultry or non-domesticated sources. Or non-domesticated, if you can get perhaps like a grass-fed cow or a buffalo or something like that, would be safer than your typical beef or pork.
So why is that the blood in meat is so dangerous?
I think it's the fat content. There's significantly 5 times more fat in your grain-fed cow versus your free-range grass-fed cow, or your domestic turkey versus your wild turkey. A lot more fat.
Well, you know, in my family, a lot of my great uncles died of colon cancer, and the difference between them and my grandfather, who was a vegetarian because he was a Seventh-day Adventist minister, that was the main difference. And I mean, in my own family, I've seen what killed the people on one side versus the other. It's very fascinating, but now science is bringing that out. What's our next thing?
The next point is just limiting fat, especially saturated fat. One interesting thing about the fat in animals, we're learning now it's not just, we can't make a blanket statement and say all fat is bad. Because we really know that there's certain fats that our bodies need. There are essential fats in our diet, and some of those are the omega-3s. Interestingly, animals, like I was mentioning, like a cow who is fed on grass, for example, they will have more omega-3s than that cow that is raised in the feedlot. In fact, after that cow's been in the feedlot for a couple of months, there's almost no omega-3 or good fat left in their body at all. It's all been replaced with an unhealthy kind of fat.
Okay, so yeah, if you are going to eat meat, make sure it's been on the range, not in the, yeah. And how many people do that? They probably, most people just go to the store and buy whatever's there.
Whatever's on sale.
Right, whatever's on sale.
Yeah.
So limiting the fatty foods, and besides meat, what are some other saturated fats they should avoid?
You know, one animal is responsible for 5 of the top 6 sources of saturated fat in our diet. I bet you can guess.
Probably the cow.
It goes moo, yeah. So dairy accounts for 4 of those top 6, and beef is one of the other top 6. The other sources of saturated fat would be oils, you know, French fries and other fried foods.
What's the percentage in French fries of fat?
I think it's probably around 50% of the calories in French fries or potato chips are pure fat. There's no nutrition in that. It's just
I heard. I mean,
eat more.
Didn't want to put you on the spot there, but I heard that like French fries are 70% fat. Someone told me once.
Could be.
It's just 50 to 70. That's a lot of fat. It's interesting. You know, you're a Christian clinician as well, and you know, of course, I'm a Christian. But I've noticed something that's fascinating, that in the scriptures it says avoid fat and avoid blood. The very same things that now science is telling us to do. Avoid those things. What's our next one?
The next point, Don, has to do with salt. We've heard for years that too much salt's bad for the heart, but too much salt also can cause cancer.
Explain that.
Well, people that eat a lot of salt, it's been found that there's a higher rate of cancer. The recommendation from the study is to keep salt down to 2,400 milligrams a day. That's 1 teaspoon of salt a day.
Ooh. I mean, a potato chip seems to almost have more than that.
Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of people say, well, I don't add salt to anything. But 70% of America's salt doesn't come from the shaker. It comes from what's already in the food that's purchased and processed. And as far as how do you measure and how do you count, it's tougher if you're eating a lot of restaurant food, but sodium is on all the labels. So 2,400 milligrams. I tell my patients they've got 2,400 sodium bucks to spend, and if they go have a can of soup, they might be spending 900 or 1,000.
So is it safe to say canned products are always higher in sodium?
Unless they say low sodium, you got to look at that. Frozen dinners notoriously are going to be high in sodium.
And of course, potato chips and all these other things, it's very obvious they have a lot of salt.
And a lot of restaurant food.
A lot of restaurant
salty.
food. Is that right? So, yeah, okay. So keeping the salt down to less than 2,400
milligrams,
which is like a teaspoon.
Right.
Okay. What's our next recommendation? Number 10.
The next recommendation, I suppose this would be for people who do eat meat, but don't grill or barbecue your food in a direct flame. This is very interesting. It's something I hadn't heard at all until this study came out. But the the meat juices, when they drip over the direct flame, they create a carcinogenic smoke. And so smoked meats, and when that smoke gets back on your food, that's actually toxic. If the flame is hot enough that the meat actually gets burned or charred, that charred part is bad for you. That's carcinogenic. I grew up thinking that, well, just eat that charcoal, it's good for you. But
yeah.
it's really
So
really not.
is that true just for meats, or is it true also for if you're grilling vegetables or doing that kind of stuff on your grill?
I probably wouldn't eat the stuff that's been cooked to the point that it's not recognizable, Don.
Well, some people just find that the most tasty, you know, the part that's just kind of, you know, and they really look forward to that.
You know, if you're following all these other 9 steps and you're grilling your vegetables and you're getting your 5 or 9 vegetables in a day, more power to you. I think that's great. But we just to say one thing, we did get a grill that we barbecue on, and it's completely sealed. There's no exposure to the flame at all. It's got a non-stick coating, and so all the juices will drip off to the side, and there's no burning or exposure to the direct flame. So those are available.
A couple things we haven't talked about or haven't brought out a lot. What about tobacco?
Tobacco is the #1 cause of death in the United States, with over 400,000 deaths. And it's estimated that at least 1/3 of all cancers are related to tobacco. Another 1/3, at least, are related to diet and inactivity. So then there's another 1/3 that are related to other factors. But if you don't smoke, you cut your risk by about 1/3. If you follow these nutritional principles, you cut your risk by another 1/3. So 2/3 at least of your risk of cancer can be eliminated by these very simple lifestyle principles.
Secondhand smoke?
Secondhand smoke is very, very dangerous. Every hour you're exposed to secondhand smoke is like smoking 1 cigarette. So if you're exposed to smoke 10 hours a day, that's like smoking a half a pack of cigarettes.
So if you're in a band and everybody else smokes but you don't pat yourself on the back.
You know, go out and get some fresh air and maybe find another band.
And at Vitae Health, you help people with all these kind of principles and help them. Are people sometimes just unaware of these things?
People are extremely unaware. Even a lot of medical doctors are not aware of these principles that we've discussed.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your busy schedule there at Vitae to be with us to share these principles.
Well, thank you, Don. It's been a pleasure to be here and share this useful information.
And thank you for being with us today on Health for a Lifetime as well. We hope the information today will be helpful to you if you know someone who has cancer, but more importantly, if you want to avoid it. Thanks for joining us, and have health that lasts for a lifetime.